Patrick Dealtry is chairman of the British Security Industry Association's Lone Worker Group and a specialist in the field of solutions for organisations in both the private and public sectors keen to protect their vulnerable employees. Patrick, you're renowned as the key driver behind British Standard BS 8484 in relation to lone working. Could you outline the effectiveness of that standard to date?
Yes, sure, Brian. The origins of the standard were really with ACPO, with the police, who saw the lone worker market as something that would demand quite a lot of response from their response resources. And they wanted to try and control that, going back to other security industry markets such as intruder alarms and so on. So we wanted to get this standard in at the start of it so that it would have maximum effect. And I think that's worked very well, and in fact the police think so as well. The number of false alarms is pretty minimal, at less than 7%, and overall it's regarded as very useful for controlling the market.
And why are you supporting the inaugural Lone Worker Zone at IFSEC International 2012, Patrick?
A couple of reasons. Firstly, because I think it will be a very good way of developing the market, and secondly, because IFSEC's always struck me as an exhibition that looks at buildings, but particularly protecting people inside buildings and of course the business itself. But Lone Worker and the Lone Worker Pavilion, I think, is a very good way of expanding that, because what it does is look after people when they're outside of the building, when they're equally or probably more vulnerable, and I think this is a very good development in the way IFSEC, I hope, will go forward.
Now, on day 3 of the show in the IFSEC Centre Stage Theatre, you're addressing the premise put forward by Malcolm Cheshire that lone worker protection is a paradox. Can you tell us a little about the background to this debate, Patrick?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting proposition, this, and when Malcolm first suggested it, I thought, that's a bit funny, but actually it certainly made me think quite a lot about some of the reasons for lone workers, why they're vulnerable, why he thinks it might be a paradox, etc. And it also made me think about the term lone workers, because a lone worker, if you think about it, really is somebody who's an employee working on their own. And that is, for example, an agricultural employee working alone in a field, or a forester working alone in a forest. Whereas actually the lone worker is vulnerable because he's not alone, because there are perhaps people around him wishing to do him harm, and therefore he's not alone in that sense. So I think the semantics of this debate are going to be quite interesting. I hope so, and I hope lots of people turn up and watch it.
What do you feel are the altruistic benefits to be derived from driving the lone worker sector forward?
When I got into this market and first thought of it, which was back in about 2001, and then started with one or two others, a company in 2003, a company that's still going, which I have nothing to do with anymore. It was, of course, as a business, as a commercial proposition. But one thing that struck me very quickly was that this was not just about making money and building a business, although I enjoy building businesses. It was also about protecting people. And certainly in the business that we built, we did a lot of work with the police in domestic violence protection, protecting high-risk domestic violence victims. And I know that what we did has saved lives. It saved lives of vulnerable women, and it's saved a lot of them from injury. And it's also made their lives easier. And I think that's a very good thing to be able to do, particularly for me as I perhaps enter the twilight of my working life. It's a good thing to look back on.
Thank you very much indeed, Patrick.